Welcome everyone to episode 56 of What's That Sound podcast. My name's Stu Watts, and today I talked with Nick Franklin, who is the owner of Franklin Audio, who create audio utility tools such as DI boxes, reamp boxes, things like that. He also has the past history of being a mastering engineer and a recording engineer, as well as a lecturer at JMC. And of course, we unpack that whole journey here on the podcast. We also talk about the positives and negatives of the tertiary education of audio, as well as Franklin Audio's approach to social media content and the key things he's learnt about running a business. And before we begin this episode, just want to address the fact that I've been a bit absent with the podcast, haven't posted a new episode in over a month. And the reason for that is I took a month off. I actually stayed at home with my 7-month-old daughter while my wife started her new job. So it was good to have a break, but I'm ready to get back into the swing of things. As some of you will know, we got nominated for an MPEG award. We did not win, but congratulations to Grid Series who did win that award. They do some amazing stuff, so check out Grid Series if you get a chance. But went up to the award ceremony, which was in Sydney, and had an amazing time meeting up with, obviously a lot of people that I've, interviewed and made friends with over the last couple of years doing this podcast. So it was an awesome time, had a great time, and thanks and shout out to MPEG, Anna, and the rest of the organization at MPEG for throwing the awards. It was awesome. If you could do us a favor and share this podcast with a friend, whether that's on your stories on Instagram, in a DM, or in an actual conversation, it really does help spread the word about the podcast. Give us a rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. That'll help bump us up in the algorithm. If you would like to support the podcast, you can jump on our merch store and buy a t-shirt. We got black and white t-shirts, super cheap. You'll look really cool, of course, because you'll have the What's That Sound logo on your shirt. And everyone will ask you what it is, and then you can, share and spread the word about the podcast. Anyway, I'm rambling. If you have any questions about the podcast or if you want to suggest a guest, you can email us. All the links to all that sort of stuff are in the show notes, as well as links to Nick and Franklin Audio. Let's get into it. This is episode 56 of What's That Sound with my guest, Nick Franklin. You're listening to What's That Sound with your host, Stu Watts. What's going on, everyone? I am here with Nick Franklin. Nick, thank you for joining me today.
Oh, thank you, Stu. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. We were saying just before we started, it's going to be slightly different this episode because you're now a business owner of the electronics company Franklin Audio. But before that, you were a producer and engineer. So I'm sure we're going to have heaps to talk about. But tell us a bit about yourself and what you do, mate.
Well, currently, as you mentioned, I'm the owner of a company called Franklin Audio, and we manufacture audio equipment primarily in the kind of utilitarian device category. We make DI boxes and synth switches and reamp boxes and that kind of thing. So that's what I'm currently doing primarily. I still have a toe in the music world, pick up a mix or a master here and there, although that's becoming more and more difficult to fit into my schedule these days.
Yeah. Nice. Well, take us back to when you were a young tacker. Tell us about your upbringing and where music came into play for you.
So I think for like a lot of people, music kind of came into my life a little bit through my parents. They're not particularly musical themselves. Like Dad plays a little bit of guitar, but I consider them like big music fans, and they had really great taste in music. And some of my earliest memories are sort of hanging out in the living room listening to vinyl records with my parents, and before long became interested in learning the guitar and the drums, and I was fortunate to have very cool parents that, were into that. And so Dad sort of fit out the garage as a jam room that me and my buds could all get in and, make as much noise as we want.
Love that.
Yeah, it was good. And, through learning the guitar and playing in bands, just for whatever reason, I seem to be the one in the friend group that sort of naturally gravitated towards the technical side of things. And, as soon as I discovered that you could get the sound into the computer and, reverse it and put reverb on it and play around with it, I was just instantly bitten by the bug. Probably more bitten by the tech bug than the music, to be honest. I mean, I loved playing guitar and I still love playing guitar, but instantly kind of fell in love with the whole recording thing. And again, my parents were very generous and very supportive of that, helped me save up my own money and buy some music gear. And so I was recording my friends' bands as young as like 15 years old with a pretty ghetto little setup in the garage. But I was into it from a young age. So that's kind of how I, got caught by the recording bug, was just playing in bands and hanging out with my friends, really.
Yeah, cool. That's awesome. And it takes back to that setup. What was that like? What was the setup like?
So I remember my first sort of proper setup was, I hadn't discovered that an audio interface was a thing. I was looking for the wrong item. So when Dad was like, "Oh, we'll get a computer for you to do this stuff on," I was like, "It needs to have a good sound card." And so the guys at the local computer shop put out this like super pimped out Sound Blaster sound card inside the computer, like a PCI card that actually weirdly had like 4 line inputs on it on RCA connectors. So my first setup was that computer with that machine and a Behringer mixer. And I sort of figured out how to get enough individual outputs from the Behringer mixer into the sound card that I could do 4 tracks simultaneously. So I'd have like some kind of SM58 copy pointed at the drums and probably another one, on a guitar amp somewhere.
Yeah, cool.
And I thought at the time, I was like Rick Rubin. It was,
So funny. Did you remember, like, at the time, like, first of all, who were you listening to around that stage? And do you remember listening to, the elements of music, like the production of music, the mixing, any of that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I think so. Like at the time, so I guess like early 2000s, late 90s, everyone my age was into like Red Hot Chili Peppers, Jane's Addiction, Smashing Pumpkins, just basically like 90s music. So it was still like real instruments then, you know what I mean? Like everyone was into rock bands basically. And I do have like some distinct memories of like sort of shifting from that listening mode of just like absorbing and enjoying music to actually catching myself listening to a whole song, like just listening to the snare or something, and being obsessed with like how are they doing that, but also pretty much pre-internet. So certainly pre, Facebook groups and good forums for figuring this stuff out. So also feeling like it was all a mystery. Like I had no idea how were these bands recording, as far as I was concerned, it was probably like me into their Sound Blaster sound card.
Yeah. We wouldn't have known any different. That's right. Yeah. And it's like, unless you knew about like mixing magazines and stuff like that, like there was no like, but also how did we find out about those mixing magazines? You have to go to a very specific place to buy it. You couldn't just buy it online because it didn't exist. So it's like, you just didn't know.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, moving on to, your older teenage years and out of school, did you study, what did that look like?
Yeah, so actually funny you should bring up audio magazines because my mum is a librarian, and one day she brought home a magazine which was Audio Technology magazine, actually, early audio technology. And it was the first time I'd really like seen people write about this stuff that I was trying to sort of figure out. And actually, weirdly, in that magazine was an ad for JMC Academy. And like, I didn't know that like that was even something that you could like go to uni for. You know what I mean? Like, I had no idea that was a thing. I was probably like 16 or 17 when I saw that. And so we looked into it and came down shortly before I turned 18 and like had a bit of a look at the campus. I mean, I don't know what I would be looking for. I was like, it all looked like incredible to me.
Yeah,
it was probably Tasca mixes and stuff, but I was like, whoa, this place is crazy. Yeah. And as I said, my parents have always been down for me to pursue whatever I was sort of interested in. So yeah, I did. I signed up to go to JMC. That would have been 2005, 6, I think. And moved from Coffs Harbour to Sydney and did the degree at JMC. So kind of the first sort of formal learning about that stuff. And I mean, I thought it was coming from this sort of completely self-taught background and then having people sort of explain why the things that I had experienced actually work and exist was, for me, I found it really quite incredible. And at the time, the course had like some really cool and interesting lecturers, actually people that were writing for Audio Technology magazine and stuff at the time.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I mean, I was stoked. I was just a young kid that was obsessed with audio, learning as much about it as I possibly could,
And I studied as well, and my experience of studying at TAFE was that I loved the environment of being surrounded by, a few, not too many, but people that were keen to learn about this sort of stuff. I think that was the coolest thing. You're kind of excited to go, not just to learn from your lecturer or whatever and study the stuff that you're interested in, but being around people that, want to learn as well and, you vibe off each other. Do you have those sorts of memories or like what was your experience of studying like?
Yeah. It was sort of up and down in that regard. I was a little bit surprised. I suppose not everyone had moved quite as far to come and do the course as I had. I was, as with any university degree, I'm sure, I was a little bit surprised how few of the students sort of seemed obsessed with the idea of recording as I did. To me, it seemed like an incomprehensible amount of money to be spending on something to not try to get the most out of it. Having said that, made fast friends with a few extra keen students in the class for sure. And you know what? The lecturers were really good about that stuff. Like we asked if our class could actually be scheduled, our studio group could be scheduled on a Saturday so that we could use the studio for the entire day.
Oh, wow.
So like basically me and my mate Pete and my mate Mike, we just had a class at 9 a.m. on a Saturday and we would book the studio for the rest of the day.
That's
after
awesome.
that. It was amazing. Like, yeah. And no one else seemed to really want to book the studios that much. Like they were available all the time. So yeah, every single Saturday we'd do like a 12, 14 hour studio day and just be left to our own devices. So yeah, there was definitely some keen ones and it was good to be around them, but lots of people sort of didn't seem as keen and definitely sort of dropped off after that.
And so, moving on to finishing up studies, what route did you take? Did you have mentors? Like, how did that work out?
So in the months sort of leading up to finishing studying, I was playing in a few bands in Sydney and I sort of had this harebrained idea that if I took my bands to like some different studios, that would be like a way to meet the people that run the studios.
Yeah.
And one sort of meeting that worked out pretty well was with this guy, Rick O'Neill. I'm sure you've crossed paths with over the years.
I haven't actually, but I've heard
really?
his name pop up a number of times. So yeah.
Yeah. So Rick at the time was he still runs a mastering studio, just not in the same spot. But the studio at the time was massive. It was this huge facility with other recording studios and this gigantic mastering room. And I took my band there to get our EP mastered. And I probably kind of annoyingly, but just sort of chewed his ear off about how I was finishing up studying and I was, looking for places to try and intern or, assisting work or whatever. Nothing really came of it at the time, but he did say, just follow up with me every now and then because things change. He had a full-time assistant at the time, so there wasn't an opening, but just kept following up. probably emailed him like every 2 months or something after that, just saying, how's it going, blah, blah. Then one day I was just working my cafe job that I'd been doing the whole time I was at uni. And he phoned me and he's like, can you come to work tomorrow? And I was like, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was like, I just had to let my assistant go because he did something silly and it's cost me a lot of money and it was irreparable. Yeah. And so, I told my bosses at the cafe on the spot, hey, look, I'm going to just go and work for this other guy full time, like starting tomorrow. They were stoked. They were like, yeah, we knew you weren't going to be here forever. Yeah. So I think I'd finished JMC like 3 or 4 weeks before that. And then a month later, I had this like unicorn full-time position in a big studio as assistant, which is like, as you know, those opportunities they barely come up, you know? So
absolutely.
Yeah. So I just threw myself head first into that role. It was like grueling and I got paid very little and we were there like all hours, but kind of like driving a car. Like I feel like I realized that I didn't even really learn anything in audio college. I mean, of course I did, but once you're like on the job, having to actually do it day in, day out, I learned so much just even in the first couple of months of being there. And I just tried to make myself like as indispensable as possible. Like every second that there was idle hands, so washing the dishes, like, making the studio immaculate, whatever it needed to be. And lots of the job was just going to get dinners or coffees or whatever. But also Rick was like teaching me all about all his mastering tricks.
Amazing.
Yeah. So I had
cool.
I did have like that true form of like a mentor, from the very beginning. And it, not just about the audio stuff, but also just like how to handle, just watching him handle sessions and handle people and, that kind of thing is like, that was invaluable, really.
Absolutely. I think there's something to be said. You said that those types of jobs don't just pop up, and I've heard that on this podcast a number of times, but I think the point is when you show your keenness and, you do what you did by following up and constantly checking in and saying, hey, can I help out? Can I have this studio? People see that. It's very obvious, the ones that it stands out, the ones that give a shit and care and want to learn, because it doesn't matter how much you know, it's how much you're willing to learn and the effort that you put in. So, I have heard that a number of times. So it's like, it doesn't just happen, but it does if you really prove yourself.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I mean, I feel like throughout my career, I've had like a couple of these situations that seem like really lucky chance encounters, but those encounters wouldn't have happened unless, I'd worked hard to put myself in those positions. That's how it always happens, and as I got, older and got into a position where I would want to use assistants, the same thing happens. It's like the students who've checked in every now and then gone like, hey, still really keen to give you a hand in the studio. If they've checked in once every few months and then I go, actually, what? I do need someone for that session coming up. They're the top of the inbox when you go to look for someone.
Right.
Yeah.
And you realize how rare it is for people to follow up. Like, I get it all the time where people reach out to you, say, hey, can I do this? Can I come see the studio? Can I come hang out? I'll just watch. And it's like, absolutely, please come in. But you see them once and then they're gone. And it's like, it happens all the time. I want to, continue the the journey, but I want to touch on those sessions that you had and that time with Rick. Like, what were the huge learns that you took with you into your sessions?
So look, I think the main thing that hadn't occurred to me and that I still try to remember, to this day is that like we're dealing with the last chance in mastering. I mean, you're dealing with the last chance anybody has to change this record, and it's a record that somebody might have spent like a year, more than a year, like an immense amount of time, and so like the bare minimum respect that you can give people is to like just absolutely zero in on the details and make sure everything is right. Like we would finish a CD master and it didn't matter if it was midnight. I had to put the disc into a CD player and I had to put a pair of headphones on and I had to listen to the CD master from beginning to end, even if that was going to take until 1:30 in the morning. Because if that CD got sent to the pressing plant and there was an error or we'd accidentally overlapped two songs or two of the songs were in the wrong order or whatever, I mean, that's someone's nightmare. You know what I mean? It goes and gets pressed into 3,000 copies. Not good for you. Obviously awful for the artist, So I think being like very detail oriented was like one of the things that I learned from Rick. I think the other thing that I learned from him, which I'm probably not as good at doing to this day, is like that there's almost no disaster in a recording studio that can't be dealt with. If someone is upset, like no one has died. We're just doing music. And I was always impressed with the way that if he sent out a master and someone wasn't stoked on it or whatever, to them it might seem like the end of the world. I was always amazed at how good he was at just going like, it's going to be all good. We're gonna, and I'm going to do another master and trust me, this afternoon you'll have another file and you'll be stoked. Where I tend to get like, I'm sure you've experienced it. You get like a page of mix notes from someone or something, and I just like stress out. I'm like, this is the worst. This is the worst. This is the worst thing that's ever happened to anyone.
Well, I clearly suck at my job.
I've got to give up. I don't know what I'm
that's
doing.
it. I'm done.
Yeah. So it was just, it was the details, and but simultaneously being like kind of chill about, when there was an issue with the things I think I learned the most there. Yeah.
I think it's an important point about mastering. Like, me being not I do mastering jobs, but I'm not a mastering guy. But the difference is, when you're in a session or when you're recording or even producing or whatever, it's like a lot of it is like, let's go with the flow. Like you're really just going. Not you're paying attention to everything because every little thing matters. But if something happens, it's like, oh, well, we'll just keep going or we'll just do another take or whatever. But like you said, for mastering, it's like it's all of that stuff's done. So you're focusing on just this song and you got to make this song and you got to notice every little thing. Every little thing matters. And I think that's a really important point to make.
Yeah, absolutely. And not just the songs, but then there's all this kind of like borderline admin work that also needs to be in order. If you're sending it off for vinyl pressing, you got to make the PQ sheets and every beginning of every song needs to be in the right place and the sheets need to be correct. It's a lot of it is actually kind of, if you take your eye off the ball, you can really make big mistakes. So it is, super, super detail oriented for sure.
Yeah, it's a different game. Well, take us into, keep that journey going. What happened after that?
So after I hadn't been working for Rick for too long, maybe like a year or something, we found out that the building that it was in alongside Phil Punch's old studio, Electric Avenue, had basically been sold to developers, which is a bit of a ongoing theme here in Sydney, at least. I don't know if it's the same down there, but old commercial buildings here tend to, after they've had their day in the sun, often get sold on for something else. So
it's a lot more for music venues as opposed to maybe recording studios, but absolutely you do hear it pretty regularly, like maybe once a year or something, maybe once every 2 years or something. Yeah.
It's a real shame. So anyway, we had to move out of that building. Fortunately, Rick didn't have to do like a full make good because they were going to push the building over anyway. So we just pretty much wrapped up what we wanted to take, pilfered all the air conditioners and took as much stuff as we could for his next studio.
Nice.
And got out of there. And then there was kind of this, Rick started building a new place and there was like a carrot being dangled. Like my job still existed once the next studio was ready, but that was like a unknown amount of time. And I just needed to like get on with making some money and doing my thing. So I just sort of kicked about doing some freelance stuff. It's actually when I first started building and selling some little bits of electronics and teaching myself that kind of stuff because I had a fair bit of time.
What year was this, sorry?
I want to say like 2 years after I'd finished studying, maybe 2010 or something. Around then, I would say. Just very casually, like just learning to build some guitar pedals and selling them to my friends. And a guy called Pete Holtz, I don't know if you've ever met Pete, but he's a music producer here in Sydney. At the time, he was working at JMC Academy, and he was like, man, if you just want to come and just do some casual like teaching here, I could get you a job for sure. Like just teaching in the studios, showing people how to use Pro Tools, just coming in when they can't figure out why their mic's not working or whatever, just basic like sort of studio stuff. So I went and did that for a while because I was at the point where trying to kick around doing freelancey stuff was getting pretty tough, and I was still young and new and didn't have a client base. I hadn't sort of built that, I was only a couple of years out of college at this point. So went and did that, and that was a great experience. Just sort of, I found teaching to be like a really good way of cementing my own understanding of how things kind of work, because when you have to teach it to somebody else, you have to have it kind of crystal clear. Yep. In your brain.
You can't have any holes, but also like it forces you to be like, if you don't know something, it's okay to not know that in the moment as well. Like, but and that's good, because you kind of go, oh, there's a gap here, and this seems to be an area that I really just need to upskill on. So it can be. I love learning stuff. So like, and I'm sure everyone listening to this is in the same boat, because we're all nerds. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I found with teaching, if you were honest with students when you didn't actually know something, like it's a heaps better vibe. Like if someone says like, when I was teaching electronics, if they asked something that was like way outside my pay grade, I'd be like, I don't know, but I think right now we can figure it out. You know what I mean? Let's go on a little investigation and we'll see if we can figure out why, that capacitor is there in that circuit, or let's figure it, And so, I enjoyed teaching, but it was a little bit of a strange vibe because I was still young. Lots of the students were like probably barely younger than me, if not, some of them older is always the way. And so, and I also had a bit of a yearning to like get back out there, because I hadn't really done my time in the real world. And I think there's a bit of a stigma sometimes around teaching that maybe you've not been able to make the career doing it work. So, you might just, go, which I don't actually really agree with that, but I certainly felt at the time like I'm not ready to just go into a life of teaching at JMC. Like I want to get back out there and, record music. And so JMC moved from Surrey Hills to Ultimo. And by that point I had sort of moved up the teaching ranks, and I was like the head of the studios there. Mm-hmm. And that was cool, actually good timing, because they basically gave me like free reign on the credit card to like set up these 4 studios. So, at like 25 or something, I was like buying all the cables to like set up these 4 studios, which is just nuts in hindsight.
It's crazy,
but it was awesome. I had a little team of people that knew how to solder, and we fully custom set up, built all the cables, like did a full patch bay setup for this giant SSL. I mean, that's like a once in a lifetime opportunity to do a studio like that from scratch with pretty much no limitation on the budget.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's something that actually never happens.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I remember ordering like $15,000 worth of Noitric connectors one night, being like, what
it's fucking nuts. It's crazy.
So I did that, set those studios up, and maybe worked at that campus for, I don't know, like 6 more months or something. And then the JMC higher ups organized this day for like local studio engineers and owners and producers to like do a walkthrough, because the studios were so new. And I was giving a bit of a tour through the studios, and I met this guy called Chris, who at the time owned this studio called Linear here in Sydney, which was like a big old school analog studio with tape machines and blah, blah. Just for like whatever reason, like we could tell that we like got along like immediately. Yeah. And he was like, dude, what the fuck are you doing teaching here? Just come and it was one of those moments where I'm just like, this couldn't be more perfect. But he was just like, dude, if you're feeling like you want to fucking work in studios, come work at my studio. I got sessions, more sessions than I can do. I'm about to have another baby. I'm not going to be able to do any sessions after that happens. Like just, and I kind of thought that maybe he was just talking shit and not really serious. But then like a week later, he just phoned me, and I was at JMC, and he goes, can you come do a session like right now? And I was like, oh, okay. And I was, to be honest, I was like shitting my pants. Like I hadn't done a session in a big studio in a long time. And I rode my bike over there and I walked in and I'm like, oh, so what's going on? He's like, oh, Wade, the other engineer, he's sick. He has to go home. This band's already set up. Are you right? And I'm like, I think so. Can you just quickly show me where at least everything is plugged in? And I like literally an hour later, I was just in a room with a band that I'd never met before, recording, and somehow managed to get through that day by like just bluffing it. And then at the end of that day, he's like, that seemed like it went well. And I was like, yeah, sure. And he goes, man, I reckon quit JMC. Come do this. And so I did. I went back the next day and I quit JMC.
That's so sick.
Yeah.
Love those spur of the moment decisions where it's like, all right, my life's completely changed now.
Yeah, exactly.
Same thing happened to me when I got the job here at Marshall Street. I was like working in retail and I had been for like 20 years. And the owner, Marshall, like, it wasn't like an instant thing, but it was pretty much like, hey, do you want to come and be the head sound engineer? And I was like, sick.
Yes.
Yep, quit my job, done.
I love that.
It's the best.
Yeah.
I mean, you already talked a little bit about, being a lecturer and the difference between being on the other side of, learning as opposed to being the educator. Like reflecting back on it now and having years to where you've grown and things like that. What do you think now about, that education system? And like, cause it's a pretty divisive thing, a lot of people get pretty heated about it. So, I just want to know your thoughts real quick on that sort of stuff.
I always say immediately that I'm really glad that I studied, because for me personally at the time, it was the right thing to do. And it, in many, many ways, led to a lot of different things that never would have happened had I just come to Sydney and tried to, I don't know, get into a studio somewhere or intern somewhere. It wasn't like they were handing out jobs at the end of the degree, but there was certain things that just wouldn't have happened if I hadn't, and I'm also very thankful for my understanding of some of the fundamentals around like acoustics, and even to some degree electronics sort of came from that as well. And just the way that sound behaves and it exists. Yep. I am concerned somewhat that some of the schools, in an effort to have great student experience, have like somewhat potentially dumbed down some of the course content in order to basically,
reach the lowest common denominator type,
Yeah, definitely. And I think at least in some of the schools that I've got colleagues who've taught at, I've heard anecdotally that like a lot of the maths and the harder acoustics stuff is gone because they don't like getting feedback from the students. It was too hard. I don't like maths. Where I think hard as that stuff is, that's the stuff that you don't necessarily learn by just going and shadowing an engineer or something. Like a lot of the time, the greatest engineers in the world don't even personally necessarily understand that stuff entirely themselves. I do, yeah. So
I think, I'll add in my 2 cents on the, experience. The things that I remember from studying was, like I said earlier, the experience of being around people that want to learn is really like, it's exciting and it's fun, and you don't really get that anywhere else. And also the things that I do remember that I took from those years were the things like the physics stuff, phase relationships, like what the signal path is, like all of those sorts of things that you're right. If you walk straight into a studio and you don't know that and you choose not to look it up and study it, it'll just go, you'll just be kind of guessing, and that's fine if it works. But if you need to troubleshoot and you don't understand, you set yourself up for failure. So
Yeah, it's that fundamental stuff that means that you can walk into any studio in the world and probably figure it out. You know what I mean? If you understand, okay, microphone needs to go into a mic pre. If that's not working, it must be X, Y, Z. That stuff. A lot of people say now, well, why would you go to audio college if you could like educate yourself on YouTube or whatever? There's nobody going on YouTube and going like, no, you know what? I'm going to look up a video about signal path. You know what I mean? They're going straight to like, how do I make my 808 fat as fuck? You know what I mean?
Exactly. I want to do the cool shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, YouTube's half littered with, or more than half littered with people that learnt it yesterday and decided to teach it again today.
Make a channel. Exactly.
Yeah, man. Well, I love it. But you know, let's move forward into, you know, you tinkered with electronics, you were making pedals over the years and things like that. Talk more about like how that eventually expanded into your business.
Yeah, so somewhere between Turtlerock and you know, about 2000 and 2020, I'd like sort of just fallen into this little side hustle of like building pretty much just one-off monitor controllers was like the main thing I was doing, like simple but to someone's specifications, like monitor switches.
And just quickly, how did that like did you just say that, oh, I can do this? Or like, how did that conversation even happen?
Yeah. So like I think my personality is like such that when I get into like a hobby or something, I just need to know all about it as quickly as possible. And it'll be like my entire like blinkers for, you know, for that little time. So basically as soon as I figured out that DIY electronics was even a thing, probably from like, I don't know, 2010 until 2012, like every waking moment I'd be on an internet forum trying to like learn about this stuff. Like I've got most of it still here. Like I built like racks and racks of ugly looking outboard gear, just learning how to build stuff for myself. Also because I couldn't afford to buy like, you know, real gear back then, you know, absolutely. You know, but I could build a SSL compressor for $300 and, you know, just, and what I learned from my friend, I have a friend called Lachlan, his company's called Earthling Designs. He sort of showed me like the building blocks of like, this is how a switch works. So if you want to select between source A and source B, you can just wire these two sources to this. And he's like, this is how you do a stereo volume control, blah, blah. And I just started to see like, oh, I'm allowed to just put all these building blocks in a box and, you know, sell them. I mean, I was super, super underqualified to be selling electronics at the time, you know. But what I did get pretty good at quickly is like metalwork, figuring out on the internet where to order a front panel that was engraved or whatever. And for like a monitor controller, it's just wire and switches and a part in a box. And so because they were like relatively not horrible looking for DIY things, sort of managed to find enough people on the internet that, you know, would be into that kind of thing. And when I say a lot, I mean, I was probably doing, for 10 years, I was probably doing like 3 to 4 custom monitor controllers a year or something. You know, it wasn't like some huge amount. It'd just be like a little bit of pocket money to tide me over between teaching and whatever else I was doing at the time.
Yeah, cool.
But nothing that I built during that time, I can guarantee, was like groundbreaking or clever or, you know, this wasn't hard electronics. This was like caveman getting the sound from here to here kind of electronics. But actually what happened next was we just found out about the COVID thing happening, and I called my friend Pat and I was like, I reckon I'm going to have a fair bit of time on my hands over the next couple of months while we're not really technically supposed to go into the studio. I'm not sure whether I'm going to be allowed to book sessions and blah, blah. And I said to him, look, I'm thinking about building a bit more of at the time it was called NF Audio, just like my initials, like lamest like shit brand name ever, with this horrible logo that I designed myself. And I actually just contacted my friend Pat, who was a bass player from a band that I'd mixed. And I said, and he was a graphic designer. I said, can you do me a new logo? I'm going to change the brand from NF Audio to Franklin. And he was like, yeah, I can do you a logo, man. But like, I don't know, like just doing a logo doesn't like like you should do some more stuff. He's like, I've helped companies with branding. I've helped companies with, graphic design. I can do, he's like, can you just let me take one of your products and like Photoshop a different version of it or whatever, and we'll just see how it looks, kind of thing.
That's cool.
And I was like, well, you can, man, but I got no money. Like I got no budget for this. I was like, I don't know what a logo redesign costs, but that's what I was imagining doing. And he was like, that's cool. Let's just, I'll do this and you can mix some stuff for us or whatever.
Sweet.
And I was like, well, I think I'm going to have plenty of time for mixing. So let's do this.
That's great.
And he took a photo of a reamp box that I built for someone, like a one-off sort of thing, and just sort of photoshopped it to look how someone who actually knows what stuff's supposed to look like should be.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, okay, cool. So when you're a graphic designer, you understand the knobs should be spaced like this, like move this logo up here, like, let's shuffle this around. And I was just like, man, this is incredible. So
like life-changing. Yeah,
totally. And it changed my whole perception of what the electronic side of my life could be, because up until this point, I was like, it's just my little side hustle that I do when I'm not working in the studio or teaching or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I was like, actually, now that it looks like a cool actual product, maybe we could sell some of these. So I was like, look, let's do a run of like 50 or 30 or 50 of these reamp boxes that Pat had redesigned, found a new place to print on the boxes properly, and went down this whole rabbit hole of just sort of figuring it out. That was sort of early COVID time. And something, I don't know, between Pat's cool branding and just figuring out Instagram, like they all sold like pretty quickly, and then I was like, okay, fuck, maybe this can actually this could be a path for us, kind of thing. So that's how Pat injected himself into my business, and he's never left since.
Unreal. Well, I mean, I want to talk more about the actual business, but first of all, like, what do you think, if anything, working in studios, teaching people, did any of that sort of stuff translate into your business at all in any way? Or
I think in a weird way, like everything, this might sound too philosophical or something, but I feel like in many ways, like everything that I did in my life was kind of leading to this thing that I do now. I liked being in studios, and I also had convinced myself that I should want to love being in studios, because that's like seems like a dream job, right? Like everyone wants to be in studios.
It's a cool place to be, for sure.
It is the cool place to be, But I actually realized that what I like about studios is gear, like, and nerding out and just figuring. I like just figuring things out, and I don't actually like long ass days where I'm trying to wrangle a band into some performance and it's not working and people are getting upset, or, like the best studio days honestly are the best, time in the world. But when studio days are stressful, like I'd rather be laying bricks or something. Like I honestly, I'm not that attached to the studio that I'm willing to like just slog it out when I wasn't enjoying it. But what I did figure out having studios over the years and stuff is like, there's little things missing. Like there's ideas, there's these gaps, and like, I could build a one-off for my own studio, or, I want a headphone amp that can do this, this, and this. I'm going to, build that. And I see these little gaps. And I think without having spent, that time in studios, I wouldn't really be in touch with what people want. And I think that actually is a big problem for some legacy brands, when you're not in touch with what people actually need right now. Like you see products coming out and you're like, was anybody truly asking for that? Like, like was there people calling out for that, or is it, and I think the teaching, that side has helped immensely, because it's made me like comfortable with being on camera for the Instagram and with doing educational content, and with, confidently, like a big part of our company is me being able to confidently say, this is what this product does. This is why it does this. This is why you need it. And just like, I feel like trying to convince like 30 young kids that, dynamic microphones are cool is the ultimate crash test in,
so funny.
Communicating that stuff. So I think many, many different ways, all of that stuff was just sort of leading me towards this path.
Yeah, that's awesome. And man, you've made some really, really cracking points. Like I think the point about, knowing by being there is huge in the studio because, for someone like me who has no interest in tinkering and would rather pay someone to fix something, a lot of the time, honestly, when it costs money and stuff like that, it's like, I'll just make do or I'll buy something else.
Yeah.
And I think everyone's got their strengths, and for you to be able to recognize that that's something that you love to do and going towards it, that's huge. And, it's obviously led you to where you are and, you seem to be having great success with it. And so, first of all, well done. But, I think like I want to talk about, you mentioned the social media and I did want to bring this up because I it's a huge part of these days running a business, like, and like it doesn't, it's obvious I'm here doing a podcast, like it's social media, so talk to me. I love your socials. It's so funny. And I think I found you guys around, it would have been either during COVID or slightly just after on TikTok.
Nice.
Or Instagram, one of the two.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I love it. So talk me through your process there and kind of like how do you approach it and how do you get the ideas? Like how did you build it to looks great, it sounds great, all that sort of stuff.
Oh,
Lots of questions in there. Sorry.
Thanks, man. No, I appreciate it, and thanks for the kind words about the socials. We do work hard on it, so I'm glad it kind of comes across. And look, we're still learning about that stuff. We feel like students of the social media. Like if I can crack one and a video goes well, I'm just like, oh my God, yes, we got one.
How do I do it again? Fuck, I don't know.
Exactly. I don't know what I did. But yeah, I mean, social media has become our primary marketing tool. It's a bit of it's sort of a two-pronged attack. Like we have an ad spend, so we give Meta some money every single day, and our ads get placed. But the ads only work well, in our experience, if they're being shown to people that have been introduced to us in a more organic way. We can sort of, it's creepy to say, but we can usually tell the path that someone has taken to get to purchase from like the first time that they saw us and engaged to like which ads they've seen to the flow that they've sort of been through. And we find that the ads perform the best when we've had like a really good week of organic content. Like if we have a video go viral or one that lots of people share because they thought it was funny or whatever, it makes the ads naturally perform better. So yeah, I mean, we're still figuring it out. Pat, my business partner who I was talking about before, he is like, I guess, the more behind the scenes thinking about this stuff. And so like he'll just constantly be throwing me ideas like, check out this guy's video. Yeah. We could sort of use that format or, he really likes trying to understand like what is it about a video that makes people feel happy or moved or whatever. And at the moment, I would say, even though it's been some years now, we're kind of still in just a throw it at the wall and see what sticks kind of mode because I think there are some different approaches. You can be like the account that's known for doing that thing and you're like, oh yeah, I know that account. And when you see it, but that's only good if that video format always performs for you. There's no point just like doing the same thing over and over again if you're only getting, hardly any views. So we're just sort of just trying different stuff out. I had a setup at my old house where it was like a consistent look and everything.
Yes.
And that's something we'll probably set up here as well, but we're still just sort of like playing around with the ideas, figuring it kind of out we'll try some educational content. We'll try some joke content. I don't want to become like just a full meme account, but if that moves units, then
yeah, exactly.
Cool.
And it's good fun too. But you probably have fun doing it too.
Yeah, big time. Well, I think the most important thing for me is that like the socials need to remain fun for us because without that, I don't know if you ever feel this, but like I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with social media actually. Like when I hear somebody say you should be posting 3 times a week, like I almost get like anxiety around it because sometimes I just don't feel like getting my phone out and filming myself and making a video,
Yeah, absolutely. Man, I can relate to that. Like, because when I first started doing this podcast, I had the plan and I executed it for 2 seasons. I call 10 episodes one season. And for the first 2 seasons, I was like, they have to come out weekly. And I did it. But it was fucked towards the end of each season, which is why now I just release episodes whenever I can. So yeah absolutely, man. 100% relate to that.
Yeah, I think there's no point holding yourself to some kind of social media schedule if it's ultimately just going to be unsustainable and lead you to burn out because then you just won't post for ages because you need these breaks all the time.
And I do, and that's the thing that I constantly talk about when I do educational posts or whatever is you have to make it fun for those exact reasons, to not burn out, so that it's enjoyable to make, so that's not like, oh fuck, I have to do this, because then you're right, you just won't do it. But there was another point, but never mind. And I love it, but I think the thing about like people listening to this podcast are obviously interested in modern media. So so many producers and stuff that I see, because I'm in contact with a lot of them, just don't know what the approach is. And I think your approach is a great approach because literally, like, and you said Pat's the one that's doing a lot of the analyzing, but it is that thing of like, hey, let's look at that. That's a cool format. Let's try it and see if it works. Does it work? Yes or no? Cool. Yep. Do it again and see, let's try another thing. It's literally that A/B testing. Like it's as simplest, but that's the way to do it seemingly at the moment.
Yeah, I think so. And people will try to, I mean, I'm sure you get this kind of content in your feed all the time. I get a lot of people who like claim to have like the secret or like, they know how to, if you do their course, you can, you can do the viral video every single time.
And I get sucked into watching it too.
Yeah, exactly. Me too. Don't trust me. We all want to know the secret. But Pat and I have like one real like rule around the content is like, it needs to like provide some kind of value to the person who's watching. Otherwise, what is in it for them? You know what I mean? So if you're selling all the time, I mean this with all respect to every gear brand out there, but so many gear brands, their Instagram is just nice photos of the shit that they sell over and over and over again. And it's like, what am I getting out of this? If I want to look at a picture of a preamp, I'll go on your website and look at the picture of the preamp. But if I'm scrolling and I've just seen like the funniest clip of stand-up that I've ever seen, and then the next thing is like a picture of a preamp, I'm definitely scrolling. You know what I mean? We're moving on. So
it is funny how that like, sorry to cut you off, but that as soon as someone releases a new product or a new plugin or something like that, it's that plus the producer's reaction to it. And it's like, cool. A producer reacting amazing to, well, it's cool. It's a cool plugin. Of course they're going to react in that way. It's like, it's just that the old school marketing thing that just really, it's frustrating more than anything, because it's like, you're right. You kind of just like, so.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. I heard about this already. So I think, you do have to try to be like genuinely giving if you're planning on also taking, like a lot of the time I'll follow an account for a while and I'm like, oh, I like that guy. They do, funny audio memes, or they do like blah. And it's only after I've been following them for some time, I'm like, oh, they sell something, like that's why their account is here. And we're at times definitely guilty of like every post is about something that we make. But our socials seem to perform the best when, and when I say value, I mean, not just educational content's cool. That works pretty good sometimes for us. But also it can just truly be like a good laugh. You know what I mean? If someone like that's providing value. If you see an account, absolutely, yeah. So that's sort of our philosophy on it. It's not no big grand scheme.
Yeah. And I guess, you're obviously having to focus a lot more on the business side of stuff, running a business. That goes without saying. But what has it taught you? You ran studio. Like, what's the difference? Like there's obviously a lot of difference, but how can anyone that's, just a producer, an engineer, mastering engineer, whatever, how can they take some of the things that you've learned and like potentially apply it to their business?
Yeah, interesting question. It's funny. It is similar in some ways, but I've learned the hard way that it is so different to what I used to do as well. I used to consider myself so business savvy when I was a sole trader music producer. Like, I'm like, my books are so tidy and I chase up my invoices and I'm never late on, getting my blah, blah. Now it's like, well, payroll, what is that? But no, there are so many similarities. Like, one thing that I've tried to carry from the old business to the new business is like going above and beyond for like every person that you work for. Like, that was always something, as frustrating as it was sometimes in the studio, something that I always tried to do. If somebody still had like a niggling feeling that the drums weren't quite right, I would always be like, come on, we're gonna figure this out. We're gonna find the drum sound. Or if someone was like last minute, oh my God, it's already been mastered, but we need a version without this vocalist. Can you do it at 9 p.m. on a Friday? Not that I'm saying you should always jump to action, but sometimes I would just be like, yeah, I'm near my computer, it's all good, let's do it. And the idea of leaving every single customer stoked is like probably like one of the main philosophies that I still carry into this business and have tried to instill in all the staff. Like, we like to joke that we've never had a disgruntled Franklin customer that we ultimately didn't turn into like a lifetime customer in some way. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
nice.
Someone might come with the biggest grievance, like UPS has lost my package, or like, my thing arrived and it was missing this screw, or, like some, thing, and they're freaking out and they're angry and they've spent money or whatever. Like, every single time I'm like, what is the way that we deal with this customer so that they turn around and tell all their friends about what a great experience that they had. And when we've got, 200 customers a month, that's achievable. I don't know what it'll be like when you get to like Behringer status and you're trying to deal with like,
do you want Behringer status?
No, definitely not. No.
Sorry, Behringer.
But that, I think that's the sort of, it's not strictly business, but I guess it is business. It's customer service. It's like making every single customer a very, very happy lifetime customer at the end of the day is sort of the philosophy.
That's huge. That's huge. And I guess, would you say, I mean, you're not in the music industry as such, but you're so closely linked with music that you're probably just talking to musicians all day, or half the time. So what continues to kind of like either surprise you, or what things do you continuously like enjoy about being in the music industry somewhat?
Look, I think I'm continuously surprised and like delighted in a way that like every day there's some kid that behaves just like I did when I was young. Like, we have a lot of customer inquiries and they might not even be like, they might be kicking tires, or they're just like, they're DMing because they're like, I wonder if this company is small enough to reply or whatever, like.
Sure.
And they're just like young people at the beginning of their careers that are so just frothing on this whole thing, like,
yes.
The same feeling that we all had when we just began was just like, it all seems magical, and they're just, we have a lot of customers who honestly will buy like one of our cheapest things, and they'll get it and they're like, hey, got any suggestions as to what I can use this for? Like, I just got it because I just like I just like you guys.
That's amazing.
And I'm getting into recording or whatever, and I'm just like, man, what a fucking frother. Like, it's it's just so good. So I mean, I'm just surprised, not surprised, but just I love that it seems like, at least, even though there is some doom and gloom in the music industry that people like to talk about, and people, as we were saying earlier, people will say, the jobs, there's not many jobs, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. There are still just probably more than ever, kids in their bedroom making like rad music with like barely any gear and just absolutely loving it, you know?
Yep.
And that's what gives me the feeling that this is going on forever. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like people worry about AI. I'm like, man, do you think the kid in his bedroom is like excited to run to ask this AI to make a new song? No, that kid wants to pick up his, you know, Strat copy and, you know, start making the next hit record.
100%. Yeah. Fantastic point, man. You know, we'll start to wrap it up. Do you have any kind of things that are on the horizon that are either more of the same that you're like keen as for, or anything different coming up, anything like that?
What's happening this year? So got a couple of products in the pipelines. Probably can't say like too much. We're being a little bit more guarded about our new product ideas now that the company seems to have got a few more eyeballs on it. But yeah, we'll probably get 3 or 4 new things out this year. Big exciting project for the next few weeks is we're sort of redoing our little studio corner that we have here in the workshop. So hopefully the content will start looking kind of fancy. We've got like some nice timber paneling going up on the walls tomorrow, and we're going to have a nice little studio corner. So you can definitely expect a bit more studio content coming out here.
Awesome.
Yeah, and a few new products, and that's pretty much what's happening.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, you know, listeners will know that I always finish up by asking, what are your best bits of advice for people that are in their first, 5 years? First of all, for producers and engineers, and then if there's any artists that might be checking this out, what are your best bits of advice for those people?
All right. So if someone starting out a music production career, I would say find a way to fall in love with this craft that we do, because that is what will lead you in the right direction, whatever that right direction is. I think the thing that made me, sort of that pushed me through this career was like a deep-seated, genuine love for whether it was like electronics or acoustics or looking at pictures of other people's studios or whatever. Just enjoy it, because those first 5 years also could potentially not be that enjoyable. Like you're going to do some hard times. You might not have enough clients. You might not have enough studio work, whatever it is you're trying to do. But if you love it, you won't care. You'll find a way. You'll eat some 2-minute noodles and you'll do it because you love it. So just remember that there's genuine joy in this craft that we do. Mm-hmm. And for artists, that is a great question. I think for artists, try to give less of a shit about what people think about the music that you're making right now, because I think all the music that I hear that sounds fresh must have sounded nuts to their friends. You know what I mean? 2 years ago.
Yep.
Every time I hear a new artist, I'm like, oh, that is so cool. I want to make a record that sounds like that. But if you make a record that sounds like that now, it's 2 years too late. So it's impossible to know if you're the next McGee or, Tame Impala or whatever it is, but just do what you think sounds awesome to yourself, because otherwise it'll be too late.
Yeah, true. Actually, I want to chuck one more in, for people that are just starting their new business, because,
nice.
Give us the first 5 years of business. Like what have you learned from that, and what advice could you give?
Okay. I might say 2 things. I'd say one would be educate yourself a little bit about the minutiae of, record keeping, bookkeeping, using software, doing your own tax, that kind of thing, because not only does it save you like literal dollars in that, like if you're really well organized with your business stuff, your accountant only needs 2 seconds to go over your thing and, file your tax return or whatever. But also there's like, potential consequences of like, when I was young, I was just sole trading for like 5 years and never submitted a tax return. Like, just full YOLO'd it. And then you gotta pay all that back eventually. I would say the other thing is like, to some degree, maybe be more shameless than you think you're allowed to be. Like when I first started taking the studio really seriously, I just like went full hustle mode and just tried to hustle at work. And that feels like goes against every fiber of your being to like reach out to artists and go like, hey, I really like what you've been working on. Like if you're thinking about hitting the studio anytime soon, come by the place, come check it out. Following up hard on every potential lead, follow up 3 months. Again, like we were saying about follow-ups before, if an artist hit you up 3 months ago, but they've gone silent, don't let them necessarily just slip away, because it might not be that they don't want to work with you. It's just they've had other things going on in their life or they're, and so like, I think especially in the beginning, like you're going to have to just shamelessly hustle, not in a gross way. You don't have to be like, it don't have to be gross about it, but just it'll feel icky, but go hard on chasing those leads.
And I think, and I 100% agree, and I love that point. And I think to add to it is like we were saying earlier with social media, find the fun in promoting it. Like you are passionate about it for a reason. Show people that passion. That passion speaks volumes. It's like people love that. They love to be around that, like I do. And you love to see it. And I think especially for artists as well, like, it's one of those things. I was an artist for, 15 years in different bands and stuff. It's one of those things you think that you're going to spam people, but if you truly love it, and you should just want to show everyone and try and convert everyone to becoming your fan. Yeah. Like, I think if you do it in the right way, and you're not like getting angry at people or forcing people to do it, it'll just come off as passion.
Yeah. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Yep. Well, awesome, Nick. Thanks so much, man. This has been great, and I love that this has been slightly a little bit of a different podcast, and we talk more about business and stuff. That's the stuff that's floating my boat at the moment. So, yeah, man. Thank you.
Oh man, my pleasure, and thanks for the great questions. It was a really fun, really fun chat, man.
You're welcome. And thanks to all of you for joining us today. Do all the awesome social media stuff like following, subscribing, sharing it, all that fun stuff. Hit me up if you have any questions. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on What's That Sound podcast. Thanks for listening to What's That Sound. Make sure you hit follow or subscribe on your podcast platform to stay up to date with each new episode. We'll catch you next time.